so much for joining our webinar today. Today we are discussing the topic of all minds at work and some of the common communication clashes that Melody and I have observed in much of the work that we've done with neurodivergent individuals and with teams and the organizations that we've worked with. And so we are just so glad to have you here, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Jessica Lee. I'm co-founder and executive director of NeuroTalent Works. For those who may not be familiar with our organization, we are a nonprofit that partners with companies and organizations to advance neurodiversity inclusion, what it means to embrace a diversity of minds in the workplace and to connect employers to a neurodiverse talent pool.
And I'm Melody Valenzuela, and I founded Rapport Education and Rapport Consulting. My background is in educational therapy. So I specialize in working with the neurodiverse community and supporting adults and their managers in the workplace to create an inclusive and cohesive workplace environment.
Thank you. And together, Melody and I have over 20 years of experience working with the neurodiverse community, working in change and transformation with organizations and leaders. And I'm so grateful that we've come together to work together these last 5 years or so. And we are hosting these webinars on a monthly basis because we really want to share the knowledge and insights that we've gained to enable more organizations and more individuals to move faster, move towards embracing a true diversity of minds in the workplace. So as we get started, just some quick logistics here for anyone that is not familiar with Teams and the webinar functions that we have here. We have an interactive Q&A. So we invite you to please submit your questions to us. You can submit it throughout the webinar, and we will try to address as many as we can during the Q&A function. So please be sure to do that. This webinar is being recorded for all of our friends and people who aren't able to join live. And Teams has some wonderful accessibility features that you can access. The slides, you can move forward in a self-paced way or backwards. And you can zoom in and out of slides if you need to see the text in a larger format. There's also transcription available and translation if you want to hear this in another language. There's also a high contrast mode, so you can adjust it for the brightness of your eyes and visually. And for Q&A, we are enabling a chat function and our mics to be accessible for everybody. And so we welcome you to come off mute during the Q&A, but otherwise we ask that you please stay mindful of the learners, of everyone here, and wait to do that in the Q&A portion. All right. So let's jump in to our webinar today. For this hour, we're going to present for about 40 minutes of, what are the common communication misunderstandings that we have observed and been brought in to bridge oftentimes on Teams. And then we'll do a Q&A at the end. We really hope that this webinar provides your brain some breathing room. Like, we want this to be a space and a time where you get to pause and consider, how different minds work, so that if conflict arises, because we know it will, or maybe you're experiencing some currently, that this just gives you a little breathing room, a little perspective, and that it'll catalyze you forward with all the conversations and relationships we have in our lives, because conflict is inevitable, it's normal, and we're excited to explore this with you. So, Melody, take us away.
All right. So as we start to think about communication in the workplace and where some common clashes arise. We want to first kind of highlight to you a couple of areas where we feel like conflict typically presents itself, and then also give you some ideas for preventing that conflict, resolving it, and eventually building up a communication style where you would just be able to see fewer and fewer of those incidents arise. So two main categories here for our conflict arising. The first has to do with information processing. So if we understand that everyone processes information differently, there's a couple key areas to consider in processing in general. So the first would be how the information is being presented. We would call that format. So information can be shared in so many ways: written, discussed. Usually you can make it physical and move pieces around, but for us today, we want to focus on visual and auditory. So this has to do with both receiving information and giving information. We all are going to use all of the modes, but we typically will focus on one of these two categories the most. And then secondly, we want to also consider processing pathways. Processing pathways we think of as like a short or a long route that our minds take when we're receiving information, understanding information, processing it, categorizing it, and creating a response to that information. So we wondered actually before we get going here, Jessica mentioned we do have the mic enabled for later because some of us are auditory processors, some of us tend to be more visual. I myself tend to be definitely auditory, which means I'm a talker, and I would also always rather receive information auditorily. If Jessica's sharing something, I will close my eyes and listen, and I'll just retain the information better. And what about you, Jessica?
Yeah, for me, I am more visual. It just happened to be that way. And my team knows this so that, especially at the end of a long day when my mind is really tired, my team knows it's really helpful. I'm the person that's like, can we bring this up? Can you show this to me? Can you show me that Excel sheet you're talking about? And for me, when I see something, I really can take in the information a lot better and it aids me, especially when I'm tired.
So we'd love to hear from you all. If you would drop in the chat just briefly, if you think you might feel more comfortable receiving information visually versus auditorily. It's something that we want to first understand about ourselves so we can understand how to work with one another. Now that I know about Jessica, I didn't just learn it right now, that she's more visual. Whenever I'm explaining something or trying to get an idea across, I'm immediately going to start writing something down and block it out and create some pictures, even a timeline, so that we just for sure understand each other.
Mhm.
So we'll often see conflicts arise in the information processing area when people don't understand this about one another, that the way they're trying to communicate, I see a lot of visuals. That makes sense. When we're trying to communicate with one another, if we can understand that about each other, it's going to help us just communicate and avoid some conflict from the get-go.
Yeah.
So
If
then,
I,
yeah.
oh, sorry, Melody, if I could mention this too, um, entering into the work of neurodiversity is when I really started to learn about all of this, and how you and I came together when I was trying to understand more of, just what our neurodiverse community experiences. And one of the things I learned from you when you shared with me about auditory as being your main processing mode, it was so revealing because it also made sense that when we were at coffee shops working, we joke about it and laugh, but it's true. Like you could hear the music that's happening in the coffee shop that I didn't hear the bass or the little chiming sounds at all. But for you, you had a special attunement to that and you hear those things. And so it
Mhm.
mattered for you for us to have a conversation and to work together in a space that was auditorily calm for you. And I
Yeah.
think that's so important to call out here when we consider conflict, because it could just be that happening in the background.
Yeah, the environment plays a really large role in our sensory sensitivities as well, which a lot of our neurodiverse community is more impacted by the environment and light and sound and discomfort in fabrics. Sensory sensitivities as well can really make an impact. And so the conflict then is going to arise when someone is uncomfortable and trying to listen and they can't pay attention or they're not retaining information. A manager gets frustrated because they know they've already repeated this verbally to an employee a few times, and now they're frustrated. They don't want to repeat it. And the employee receiving the information is frustrated because they don't understand or they didn't hear clearly because they were distracted by the lyrics in the background that were just terrible lyrics. If you have an auditory minded person that you're communicating with, yeah, it's important to be mindful and know that about ourselves. I know that I'm an auditory thinker, so I can communicate to Jessica, I'm sorry, I completely spaced out. I completely lost track of what you were saying because this is a terrible song.
Hmm.
Okay, the other side where we might experience some conflicts in communication has to do with conversation style in general. Um, so, so there we go. The first kind of component of conversation style we would consider to be language use. And this has to do with the use of direct language or explicit language versus indirect language or abstract language. And then a vocabulary register as well. So it's important to pay attention to each of these aspects. Let me give you an example to kind of highlight the differences. This happened with one of my clients where a manager came to him and said he gave him a task. I need this done by the end of the week. I'm interested to hear from any of you because I know we have a diversity of minds in the chat. Does this feel direct to you or indirect to you? If you received this as a directive from your manager, or if you were giving this directive as a manager, would you think I'm being very clear? If you were receiving it, would you think that's not clear? So, one thing that we want to think about when we're talking about direct or indirect. And please feel free to enter into the chat how this message strikes you. Exactly. Yes, I love that. I'm a very detail oriented thinker myself. So if someone said this to me, I'd be like, I don't know what you mean by end of week. I know what I mean by end of week. Someone thinks this is very direct. End of the week, everyone should know what end of the week means. So the experience that my client had was really frustrating because he did not know what the actual expectation was. So to him, end of week means Friday, 5 p.m. That's the end of the work week. But someone also suggested, does that mean Friday at midnight? Because that is, specifically the end of the week. But maybe it's Saturday. Is he expecting me to send it on Saturday? And on the manager's end, she thought she had been very clear by the end of the week, but she also assumed that her employee would consider that means I want to check in on Thursday or Wednesday. So she contacts her employee on Wednesday to ask for an update. And he's just freaking out because he has not done the project at all because it's not the end of the week. In his mind, he knew when he was going to get it done. The manager expected to check in. That wasn't said explicitly. And then it just added to frustration for both of them. So, how can we avoid this conflict? If we go back to look at direct versus indirect language, what does that actually mean? Direct means concise, explicit. Direct phrasing means concrete, literal, where expectations are very, very clear. that means giving a specific date and time. So vocabulary register language is also an issue in the language use area because we need to be aware of who it is that we're speaking to and try to match their vocabulary register as much as possible. Because we all not only interpret words differently, but we use common words and phrases differently. And we have common phrases that are not common to all of us. So you can say common, but maybe someone's never heard that phrase before. Pacing and pausing is also critical to effective communication. This taps in a little bit to what we just said about the short and long processing pathways. A longer processing pathway literally makes more stops in one's brain when they are receiving information to, by the time it comes out of their mouth in a response or in an email in a response, their brain will literally just make more stops along the way and hit more areas of the brain. Whereas a short pathway processor, like myself, the information goes in and I immediately have a response. Both of these have their highs and lows or their pros and cons. Sometimes it's great to be able to respond very quickly, but it does mean that I might be missing some of the details along the way before I respond. Maybe I'm not asking all of the questions from all the angles that should be asked before I respond. Whereas a longer processor might take some time to get back to you after you've asked a question, but man, is that answer going to be thorough. So pausing and pacing can be affected by information processing. It can also just vary from person to person. How quickly are they speaking? How slowly are they speaking? And are they one to pause in between their phrasing to check for understanding, to make sure the person they're speaking with is really getting the information that they're trying to deliver? We had a client actually also recently experience a conflict in this area. And this happens with many of our neurodivergent talent members. It's just the idea of being mislabeled. So what had happened in this case is my client was interrupting within conversations quite frequently, and that was interpreted to be rude by many other coworkers. To my client, he had no idea he was being rude. He had no idea he was interrupting even. Part of it has to do with pausing and pacing. If my client is a quick processor, a short pathway processor, and he's speaking to someone who's taking a longer pathway. So the longer pathway person is going to pause to process what they're saying and make sure that they are coming across clearly and communicating what it is that's on their mind to communicate. So she was pausing, and my client interpreted that as, my turn to talk. She interpreted that as, you're interrupting me. Frustration immediately for both parties. No one likes to be interrupted, and no one likes to be called rude when they didn't even realize they were interrupting.
Oops. Did we lose her, Paul, or is that just me?
I think we lost her.
Oh. Melody, if you can hear us right now, you have been paused. I think maybe your internet service. Are you back? I think I see you back.
I'm here. I can hear you.
Okay, now we see you.
Take over. Take over at any time if that happens again. I had no idea that you lost me.
And you kept talking. You were right in the middle. Yeah. You were right in the middle of sharing about your client where one person, your client, was starting to speak when their colleague paused and stopped, thinking that was now his turn to speak. But she was actually just pausing to then start her next thought. So she thought he was interrupting her, that it was rude, and conflict arose And this was in front of the whole team. This was a regular thing in team meetings. So could you
Regular
take us
thing in
back
team
there? Yeah.
meetings. Yeah, regular thing in team meetings. And what starts to happen is labels start flying around because my client doesn't even realize he's interrupting. And the coworkers think he knows full well that he's interrupting and that he's doing it intentionally and speaking over them. And then they start making judgments in their mind that he must think whatever he has to say is more important than what the rest of us have to say. And none of that was entering my client's mind at all. He
Hmm.
thought he was doing a great job paying attention to social cues. He knows he has to be mindful of social cues. He's thinking, she paused, my turn to talk, everything's fine.
Yeah.
Um, and
Can I?
and yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I just want to add to what you just said about social cues, because
Hmm.
for a lot of neurodivergent professionals, and especially those that we work with that are autistic, that social fluency, picking up on the social cues that other team members were picking up on, like some of us can just look at each other and be like, eyes a little bigger, like, oh, they interrupted again, right? But
Yeah,
our client was not picking up, wasn't naturally picking up on some of the social cues that other
right.
colleagues were picking up on. And so he wasn't doing it with any malintent at all. And he was doing his best,
Hmm.
monitoring everything he could. But it just needed to be called out to him kindly by his manager, set one on one, right? Not in the team meeting, although we do
Yes.
talk about that later of what you could do as a
Yeah.
manager. Um, but that's also why we were brought in to address this conflict. So
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about then, since these conflicts I'm seeing in the chat comments that it's relatable. This happens to me all the time. And it doesn't only happen because 20% of the population is so-called neurodivergent. It happens to all of us all the time because all of us think differently, interact differently. So when we get to some preventative procedures, we'll talk about how to do that. So this is the visual that always comes to mind for Jessica and I when we're talking about this is that fit. We know what it feels like to be physically awkward when you're in a space, you're passing someone in a hallway and you don't know, or an elevator, you're getting in and out of the elevator, you don't know if they're going right or left, and maybe they think you're going right, and then you end up bumping into each other, and inevitably someone says, shall we dance? Because it's that whole back and forth, and that's what we call the conversation dance. So with the differences in picking up on social cues, processing information, short and long pathways, direct and indirect language and vocab register, and visual versus auditory information. There are so many ways for a conversation to go awry. So, how do we prevent some of that from happening?
yeah,
What we want to start thinking about um, is how do we keep these things from happening rather than on the back end trying to fix it. We want to invest primarily in preventative measures. It's just like Jess, your example from your mom. What does your mom always say
yeah.
about
My
the health?
mom, yes, after an injury that she had, she shared with me this truth that has just forever guided me now. Of she's like, it's better to invest now in your health, in preventative measures, than later have to spend money when you're sick and when you're ill and in pain. And so that's just always stuck with me of invest now in preventative measures, and in your health, mental health, physical health, emotional health in every way. And I think that's the same with conflict. There are preventative procedures that we can take, in the workplace, in how we work with teams and one another. You could even use these at home, um, of how to share information then for a diversity of minds. Because, like we were just sharing, the different, direct and indirect language, the ability to pick up on social cues, these are all things that are not apparent to any of us, right? This is why the work of neurodiversity, can feel complex sometimes, but also why it's so catalyzing because we find out, oh my gosh, this is actually just good for all of us, for everybody. So, what are some of these preventative procedures you can take in relations to information processing? And the reminder here, information processing, the modes we talked about of auditory or visual, and that short or long pathway. So, being mindful of those two things. First preventative measure, ask someone what their mind's preferences are. And this could sound like, when I have something to share with you, is it better to share it visually or verbally? What enables you to remember best, right? Melody, you brought up the example earlier of, a manager who has said the same thing over and over again. And they're like, why is my employee still not getting it? Why are they still not understanding this all the way through? Okay, if you find yourself repeating yourself verbally, now try to present that information visually also. Do both. And this is, one of the best practices of communicate in two or more modes, so that you do capture the most minds. So you gave the task verbally. Now also type it into an email of here's what we talked about. Here's the task, or have it in, whatever the shared places for the team to have all of the tasks. And you wouldn't know what enables your employee unless you ask them. So normalize that. This could be a great question to ask at your next team meeting. Find out from all of your employees and have that be a norm that everyone knows that of each other on the team.
And if you are that employee, feel free to share that up front. I
Yes.
hear I hear you trying to get something across to me. I want to make sure I have all the pieces and I'm mindful of the entirety of the task. I want to do a good job on this. It would help me to remember if I could see this a little more visually, I would understand what it is you're asking for. Or would you mind dropping those notes into an email so I can verify that I've collected all the appropriate information?
Yes. Yep. So great. And this is exactly that second point then of present information in two or more formats when you're communicating. What could this sound like? When I'm assigning you a task, how do you want to know about it? Do you want the information all at once? Or do you want one part at a time so that you have room to think about the details? If I'm explaining something really long and lengthy, which my team knows I do this, I go through the entire thing. Um, Perhaps it might help more thinkers if I went one section at a time and had that pause as I'm explaining something that's lengthy. The other thing that I've started doing is when I'm sharing information that's new to my team, I'll say, here's something I want us to all think about. I don't need an answer now. If you can think about it and let's talk about it in our next one on one, right? Just giving people the time to process and think about something before we have a conversation. I can't assume that everyone's mind is like my own, which mine is short processor, can just be moving quickly. Like, not everybody can do that. So that's going to help more people on my team.
Mm-hmm.
Lastly, catalyze action. Um, Ask questions that help someone move forward. So, what's going to help you get to the next task? Or one of my favorites, which is like, what are barriers you anticipate or resistance you anticipate in getting this task done? And that really helps people to then move forward in what we're wanting to talk about and to not have misunderstandings or conflict later.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So
Oh,
let's
go
say,
ahead.
oh, I was just moving on to resolving some of these. Did you have something else?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Preventative procedures in conversation style with
Oh, right.
language and pace. And please add here too, um, using direct language, concrete and direct phrasing being very clear about an expectation is so helpful. So that example we had before of please complete this task by the end of the week, what would be really helpful, because for some people that is not clear, is, please have this task done by 5 p.m. next Friday. And in this case, with our client, where the manager checked in the middle of the week and he just froze. I mean, he felt like he was
Mm-hmm.
not performing well, that it meant he didn't do something right because he didn't
Mm-hmm.
get it done. And it was Wednesday and he thought Friday, 5 p.m. So, as specific as we can be, so people aren't caught off guard and can do their best performance, their best work, just being really concrete and specific, and noticing about yourself of like, for me, sometimes I do want to check in on a task. And so now it's being aware of, oh, yeah, maybe I should let my employees know that I might be checking in next week. I just want to hear a status update, or that you feel like you'll be on time to get the information to me by Friday at 5 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
As specific as I can be to reduce any anxiety and so that both of our expectations are met and maintained.
Mm-hmm.
And then providing time that, um, when we share information with the team in one-on-ones, that we check for understanding while we're speaking. And you don't know if the person you're speaking to has a long or short processing pathway, unless you've asked up front, which we hope you do now after going away from here. But in the case that you probably don't always know, lean on the safe side and take more time. Use
Mm-hmm.
the pauses, allow for it. Um, and especially when you're explaining a new task or presenting new information, it will really matter to allow people time to think about it.
Yeah, and when you're on the receiving end, I think what our clients experience as well, someone just made a comment about being in a fast-paced environment, and we all need to learn how to adjust to that. There are corporate positions that are high-paced. So if you are on the receiving end and you know you need more time to really make sure you're getting a hold of the details, I was just going to say it this way, you are not the problem. Because your mind takes a longer pathway, it's not a problem. There is nothing wrong with that. There are so many beautiful, my lovely, brilliant husband is a long pathway processor. He is so thorough. He's always right. You know why? Because he had all the time to think about it and to be right. He considered 16 angles that I did not consider before I answered or before I turned something in. So if you are that employee, um, don't take on shame. Don't go to shame to say, I must be the problem because I didn't catch a detail. I must be a problem because that manager must have been super clear. Listen, managers are just human beings. They make mistakes as frequently as I do, all of us, because that manager doesn't know that a long pathway is is a thing. They don't even know that a short and long pathway is something to be considered. So it is absolutely not something to take on as your burden alone as that employee. This is a two-way street. Whenever there are two people talking, it doesn't matter what those two minds are bringing to the table. It is the job of both parties to make it make sense to one another. So just want to give a little support there while I can, but we're going to get into how to resolve those in just a sec. Are we going there now?
Yep. Take us away.
So okay, so let's think about this. So you either already tried the preventative procedures or you didn't think about the preventative procedures or remember them, and now there's conflict. And the very first thing we want to do before you go try to resolve something is observe yourself. Are you emotionally regulated? Are you in a place to have a conversation? And we do that for a couple reasons. We want to be in a regulated state, in a happy medium green zone, because we're calm, which means we have access to our higher levels of thinking. We are going to be able to process information better if we are calm. Otherwise, you have your reptilian brain very irritated in fight or flight mode, and you're thinking either self-defense or self-promotion, and that is not going to resolve any conflict. So think before you start speaking to an employee, and I'm just going to say a partner at work, a team member, a life partner. Observe emotional regulation in yourself. Be prepared to speak to anyone on your team as though they are a sweet grandma at a grocery store and she's asking you to read the label. How would you respond to that woman? You would be kind, you would be calm, you would speak slowly, you would check for understanding. You're not going to roll your eyes at her. So imagine this is what I do. This is a sweet grandmother in front of me, and she deserves my time and my attention and my care. And I'm not going to approach her unless I am emotionally regulated. Secondly, um, now that you are regulated, actually, I didn't say observe in the other party as well if they are emotionally regulated. It's okay to ask. Sometimes someone is quiet, but that doesn't mean that they're ready for conversation. It's okay to ask, is this a good time to have that follow-up conversation? And if not, when is a good time? So observe in yourself and observe in the other party whether they are ready to have that conversation. Then go back to some of those preventative procedures. Acknowledge this conflict likely arose from a communication clash, an information processing difference, a language use difference. And since we know that those are common areas where clashes are going to occur, go back to those preventative procedures. Ask that person how they are processing. Ask if things were clear. Be curious instead of judgmental. Think about maybe this guy's not being a jerk because he's interrupting me. Maybe he's actually thinking it's his turn to speak because I know I'm a pauser when I talk. And then lastly, bring in a third party if needed. Because none of us are going to do this 100% correctly. We're not always going to wait till we're emotionally regulated before we have a conversation. That's why we have arguments. That's when arguments happen. You can bring in a third party at work. You can consult with a third party outside of work and get some input. You can consult with us. I mean, this is what my manager employee teams do is send me an email or get online for a Zoom to say, here's what happened. I cannot understand where the conflict originated, and therefore I won't be able to resolve the conflict without some help. And that just works for all of us to be able to have support in that. So we talked a little bit about how to prevent, how to resolve, which mostly is go back and prevent. How do you start to build a more solid communication in general? How do you make this a habit so that you are communicating to a diversity of minds, and this becomes more of just a natural communication style for you? The very first thing is to understand yourself. That's why we started asking these questions at the beginning. Do you know what kind of processor you are? Do you know how you like to receive information? Is it visually or verbally? Are you a short or long way or long pathway processor? When you know that about yourself, firstly, it's going to cause you to think about how the other person processes as well. It's going to make you mindful in a conversation about how you are sharing information and how the other person may or may not be receiving information. And that's what clear communication is all about. It's the metacognition. It's thinking about how you are thinking. It's developing theory of mind. It's thinking about how is that person thinking, because then you can get a little more nitty gritty and figure out where the conflicts are coming from. Once you're aware of some of these things, feel free to use truth statements. I think as a culture, we back away from just speaking out what is true. In my client's case, it would have been very helpful for the other party to just say, I feel like I'm being interrupted frequently, and I think that's inhibiting our conversation. That would have given my employee, my client, an opportunity to just share. Well, the truth statement is, I'm so sorry. I'm not trying to interrupt. I saw that you paused. I thought it was my turn to talk. So, the more that we can just be speaking truth about our experience, the less likely we are to run into conflict. This can sound like it seems like such and such is happening, or I'm observing this. We actually had that within within our own team. We had a team. Do you want to share this about our team meeting? This example?
Yeah.
Go.
Yeah. This is why. And, we share all this because we are learning with you all, right? Even
Right.
after our 8 to 20 years of experience doing this. Um, on our own team, we had a team meeting. There were about 6 of us together in person at Melody's office having a team meeting. And I was so grateful because at some point Melody called us all out and she was like, whoa, whoa, you all are interrupting each other and no one's completing their thought here. Right. And we are a neurodiverse team ourselves.
Yeah.
And I so needed to hear that. And I also, as the leader of our team, there is a trust that I have with Melody and all my team members, but Melody specifically, where when she called that out, I was grateful, but as a leader, I was also like, "Oh man, oh no," right? I went into my own thought of, and this is a, separate webinar, right? But all the triggers for me as a leader that I'm like, "Oh no, I did something wrong. Oh no." And I had to come back to this, no, like this is just disruptive for everybody else. My mind can work at this speed. Someone else mentioned fast paced, right? Like I was used to working in a fast-paced environment. That's how I naturally have worked. And I needed that called out to me. And I was so grateful she called it out to our whole team. Um, and so from there, we were like, okay, let's make sure everybody gets to complete their thought. And maybe we look at the time and we each only have 2 minutes, right?
Mhm,
And we can parking lot things.
mhm.
And then Melody and I met separately one on one where I'm like, oh my gosh, please help me form some strategies for myself, for my team, so that I could feel comfortable to lead our team in this way. Because I didn't want someone to feel like they weren't being heard, or that not everyone got
Right.
their thought across. So
Yeah, right.
I needed that truth called out to me in a kind way.
And it was helpful not only to the two people that were speaking, but also to you as a leader, and then the others in the room that were trying to listen and take in all the information. So you never know, speaking out with a truth statement doesn't necessarily mean that you're advocating for yourself. Even you could be unwittingly advocating for someone else. I just
Hmm.
want to hit this third point really quickly about practicing in real time, because we do want to make sure that you guys have time for your questions, because that's our favorite part. um, Practicing in real time means, I guess what we're saying is that developing a new communication style, you're going to have to practice and be aware of what you are doing in real time. Sharing that intention in real time. My intention and my purpose is to understand you. I'm not understanding and I really want to. I'm going to pause us so that I can really make sure that what you want to say is coming across. Just sharing that intention puts you on the same team, because when we're in conflict, we usually we treat each other as adversaries. And conflict resolution is not about negotiating. It's not, it's about a win-win. It's about finding a way for both of us to leave on the same page and feeling good and being able to be productive. So if someone is still frustrated, this is not a win. Neither of us can leave the conversation without being heard and have it result in a win. That's going to create conflict. So practicing it in real time, we are not against one another. Speaking that out, a win means we learned to work collaboratively and we're on the same team and we're treating each other as team members rather than adversaries.
Yeah, and I just want to emphasize that point of what you said, of even starting a conversation when we know there's conflict. with those truth statements of intent and purpose. You said it, I want to say it again. We're on the same team.
Hmm.
I care about us having a working relationship that works for both of us.
Hmm.
We work virtually together. Like, this is an added dynamic that we're both learning. How can we work together better? Because we want to go home at the end of the day and
Hmm.
be able to give our all to whatever is after work, right? I don't want to have conflict and misunderstanding. Start
Right.
with that. That's why we're having this conversation. And that can just set the tone like you're talking to the grandma in the supermarket.
Hmm.
At least get us closer to there because emotions are always, you know, involved in
Hmm.
conflict.
Yeah.
So, okay, we are at time. The last thing we'll say here is we love diving deep with you, with teams, and we invite you to dive deeper with us. We have an Understanding All Minds workshop that we conduct for teams that dive deeply into understanding my own mind first, so that I can then start to understand how someone else's mind might be similar or different. You can bring us into your teams to do this. We also are launching individual learning of cohorts if we get enough people of individual learners who want to come in and learn together. And so, Paul, thank you. The interest form is in the chat. And then what Melody mentioned, she is our primary coach and consultant. We do workplace optimization coaching. So one-on-one professional development coaching with neurodivergent professionals, managers, team members that just want to understand a diversity of minds. And then we also do strategic consulting. So we come in to look at your workplace practices, processes to be optimized for all types of minds, every learner, and we'd love to partner. So now we welcome you to come off mute if you'd like to use your mic or if you want to drop questions into the chat or Q&A. What questions do you have for us? Are there other challenges you've had with communication in the workplace? What brought you here today? We'd love to
I'm
hear.
sorry, really quickly, how to type in a chat because it doesn't allow me.
Oh, there should be a button at the top that says chat, but since you're off mute, if you want to ask the question now, we're
So I just want to build on what Melody was talking about, the conversation with an employer. Sometimes I think because I'm a special education teacher, so sometimes there are so many political moments, and I would ask my administrator about um, a lack of certain resources or how we should solve something. And the truth is, they don't have a solution. But instead of that, they give me very long answer, and I kind of
Hmm.
nod. And since English also my second language, I'm thinking it maybe just seems to me that I don't understand anything. So basically, it would be yes or no question, and they would tell me like something so long. So when I leave the office, I would be like, was it a yes or no? There is no clear like I didn't understand, and I don't want to go back and ask again.
Right.
And then I would ask this third party. They said, "Don't you see? They do not know that, but they don't want to go on the record saying yes or no." And so I'm like, sometimes it would be like for me, they would say like politically, I cannot say yes or no. I just give me a wink because it would save me time. So right now they wasted half an hour, and then
Yeah.
like I didn't get the result. And so it's not only like it's okay if they don't have an answer, but at least don't waste my time. Kind of let me try to do something. So I feel,
Right.
and then at the end, and then they sent me very long email in which they said it was so wonderful to talk to you when you ask this, and I said to you this, and it's again it has no yes or no. I'm
Right.
like,
Yeah. So that, especially in education, that's going to pop up in the educational space. And it's learning how to, like you said, you didn't want to go back and ask, but that's exactly what needs to happen. Like I appreciated your response, but you gave me so much information that I'm having trouble funneling it down into some bullet points. And so I would just ask directly. I heard these bullet points, is that what you're saying? Or can you give me more bullet points? But also when you're with a student and they don't know the answer, absolutely appropriate to say, you're talking a lot, but do you know a specific answer, or can I just help you find the answer?
No, with the students, it's always easy because actually children, they have a very like this, I guess because they don't have like their position at stake, but it's mostly
Right.
administrations and there's
Oh,
like a
okay.
political jargon. And I never could understand, was it like left or right? Was it a yes or no? And then when I asked again, I said, I'm so sorry. I said, you know that English is not my first language. Can you just say yes or no? They think I'm challenging them. So after that, I learned not to ask again. So how
I
to
see.
know when there's probably there is a like left, right, and there is a thing when there is no solution, but they're not going to tell it to you. So how do you know when there is no solution? Like, how do you, what's the rule of, as you said, how do you be self-aware and see that this is a situation that they cannot tell you?
So I think what's really interesting about your question is you may be more of a black and white thinker, and the person that you're relating with may think that they have answered your question in a black and white way. So it could be that they don't know or there is no solution. In which case you could just ask. I'm looking for like a short solution so that I really am clear about my directive and what to do. But also it's okay to say, I guess for me, I'm looking for something
Yes
a
or
little
no?
more black and white because that's how I think. Would you
Okay.
mind?
Oh, okay. But do I put them on the spot?
I don't think it's putting them on the spot to ask for clarity.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I think tone of voice is going to help a lot. I think you need to be careful about how you're asking, but if you phrase it as I'm looking for clarity, then I think you'll be less likely for them to find offense, if that makes sense.
I'm looking for clarity. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I see Elisandra's hand up. And sorry if I pronounced your name wrong, but if you'd like to come off mute, you can ask
Hello,
your question. Hi.
can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, hello. No, just a question because I would like to write in chat, but it's not available for me.
Oh, that's okay. You can ask your question here off on the mic. Thanks for letting us know.
Okay. Um, I prefer writing because my English is not so wonderful, and sometimes maybe you have difficult to understand me, and I prefer write. But I can write on the chat because it's not not available.
Okay, sure. Are you a Spanish speaker?
No.
Oh, well, then I can't help there. So,
Yeah. I just
Jess, is this something where you want like an email later or something?
Yeah, you can email us and we can try Google Translate to translate the question if you want to ask it in your native,
no
most
Preferred
comfortable
language.
language. Yeah.
no so no I just would like know if it's possible I interaction in chat, but it's not available for me right now.
So, Paul is probably working on trying to make that available to you, but what we're suggesting is that you email us
Okay.
and we can get back to you that way. Does that work?
Okay, I got you. If you can put the email and you copy and paste and I send my question
There you
on
go.
mail. Uh, I can I will try comment about my problem. Maybe you can help me. So I live in Austin, Texas, 5 years, and I moved in 2019. I speak Portuguese, but I am ADHD and dyslexia. I have a little difficult to learn fast. I need more time, but I work hard and I try.
Excellent.
Yeah. So my last job is I work for Google. So, but my project ended, and I work for other projects in big tech company. But I don't have successful in my test because I don't learn it too fast for test.
Mm-hmm.
I told them I am ADD, and they said, it's no problem, it's okay. I will help you. But in the and day by day, it's not working. It's no open the arms for a neurodivergence, for people neurodiverse. Just to talk for me, it's no problem, it's okay, we have space, but in practice, it's not working.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think we do see that.
And now I don't have successful in interviews because I don't have one English fluently, and I have difficult to explain about meetings and interviews. But when my last work, so in Google, I have a lot of successful. So my managers love my job, but my project ends, and it's okay. So and for all team, they move it to Ohio. It's my project ends, but now, and so I have difficult to pass in interview, and I have difficult to learn because my ADD, it's my so
Elisandra,
yes.
sorry, I'm sorry. I know I'm interrupting you right now. I'm just watching the time because we will need to end our webinar quickly here. But I hear your challenge. I think Melody and I both hear it. And please email us because in our coaching services, we could try to meet with you to come up with the right strategies for how to approach the interviews you're talking about and the learning time that you need, and especially for test taking that often happens in interviews also. So I'm sorry to have to cut you off. And I think just the quick response there is please email us because we care about this challenge that you're having. And we hear it, it's very common and it's not easy. And we would love to be able to address that, yeah, in a more one-on-one basis. And sorry for having to cut you off.
No, okay. Thank you so much. You helped me much with this information right now.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're not alone. We just want you to know that. So
Yeah.
yeah. We are at time, so we're gonna have to end the webinar. I do see a couple of other questions here, though. If you'd like to, Melissa and Ellen, please email us these questions. We have the note here too, but we can try to answer your questions separately when we're able to. Just thank you everyone so much for joining us today. Please connect with us. And we will be hosting webinars monthly. So we hope to see you again soon. And we're here to support you and to champion you and all types of minds in the workplace. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.